So again, the amount of body I gave you has nothing to do with the amount of sin that I believe that you need forgiveness of. But regardless, welcome to News, and it's good to see some old faces, to see some new faces as well. But we are continuing in a series in the book of Malachi. We just started last week, and I started last week asking, how do you know if someone likes or loves you? And today I'm going to ask you the opposite question. How do you show someone that you like or love them? Right? So for you personally, because everyone's a little bit different, what are the things that you do to show people that you like or love them? Hugs? Okay, we got huggers in the room. I know hugs are kind of funny in Korea because a lot of Koreans are not used to hugs. And so like you go to hug them and they just kind of, like the body just shrinks. Like they don't know what to do. Like, oh, please stop. Okay, so we have some huggers. Anybody else? What else do you do when you like or love someone?
Sending a gift.
Okay, send gifts.
Yeah.
Okay. Now today with like cacao, we have like cacao gifts, so it's become a lot more convenient. Okay, gift giving. What else? The dishes for them while they're tired. So you acts of service, right? Just like we said last week, 5 love languages. So you do things. You do things that they appreciate. What else? Write a letter. Okay, so we have some romantics in this room. So you write letters. Now today people just do like email and like text, which is very not romantic at all. Like, has anyone actually received like a handwritten letter recently? It's pretty rare, right? When you get it, you're like, it's so precious. Because like, people don't do this anymore. You're like, wow, right? What else?
Life insurance plan?
Life insurance plan. Okay, it's practical. Life insurance, you're making sure that they're covered. Okay, anything else?
Make cookies.
Make cookies. Wow. Okay, so we have some bakers in the room.
Wow.
Many know that I'm a baker as well. So cookies, I've been doing breads lately. I know Joyce has been doing breads lately too. So we make things that people enjoy, right? One word of advice for brothers. If you actually like someone, like a girl, one of the worst things you can do, and I know a lot of guys do this, is they're just kind of around them. They don't talk to them, they barely make eye contact, but they like to be in their physical presence, right? I call them proximity people. Right? Other people call them like betas, I don't know, but regardless, it doesn't work. Alright, anyway, with that, let's get into the Word of God. Malachi 1, which is 6 to 13, Malachi 1, starting from verse 6. Open up your Bibles or smartphones, or look at the screen. Where the Lord says this: a son honors his father, and a slave his master. If I am a father, where is the honor due me? If I am a master, where is the respect due me, says the Lord Almighty. It is you, priests, who show contempt for my name. But you ask, how have we shown contempt for your name? By offering defiled food on my altar. But you ask, how have we defiled you? By saying that the Lord's table is contemptible. When you offer blind animals for sacrifice, is that not wrong? When you sacrifice lame or diseased animals, is that not wrong? Try offering them to your governor. Would he be pleased with you? Would he accept you, says the Lord Almighty. Now plead with God to be gracious to us. With such offerings from your hands will he accept you, says the Lord Almighty. Oh, that one of you would shut the temple doors so that you would not light useless fires on my altar. I am not pleased with you, says the Lord Almighty, and I will accept no offering from your hands. My name will be great among the nations, from where the sun rises to where it sets. In every place incense and pure offerings will be brought to me, because my name will be great among the nations, says the Lord Almighty. But you profane it by saying, the Lord's table is defiled, and its food is contemptible. And you say, what a burden, and you sniff at it contemptuously, says the Lord Almighty. When you bring injured, lame, or diseased animals and offer them as sacrifices, should I accept them from your hands, says the Lord. Cursed is the cheap who has an acceptable male in his flock and vows to give it, but then sacrifices a blemished animal to the Lord. For I am a great king, says the Lord Almighty, and my name is to be feared among the nations. Now our theme for this year, again, 2019, is one of holiness, understanding that God is a holy God, and that we too are called to become more like Him, to be holy like Him, to understand what that holiness means. Now, we started in this book of Malachi, and we saw from last week that just in those few, first 5 verses, God was telling His people, I have always loved you. And I have loved you so much, I'm going to show you my evidence, my proof. And so in this particular story, or in this particular book, He tells them, look at what I am about to do to these Edomites, these people that you hate, these people who have mistreated you, these people that you see as your bitter rivals. I will completely wipe them out. Right? And we saw, that as I gave a brief explanation through history, that this is ultimately what happened. God actually did what He said, but He did this to prove to them that I love you. Now, He used the language of love and hate, and it wasn't so much that He necessarily loved them more than loved the Israelites more than the Edomites, but it's more that God chose them. And by God choosing these people, He was also choosing to love them, and to show them that love by showing what He does to those that mistreat His people. So brothers and sisters, God gave concrete evidence of His love. And in that same way, brothers and sisters, we all, if I think we really look into the stories of our own lives, there is concrete evidence of God's love. I challenge you then, continue to challenge you that, to understand that, brothers and sisters, we are all loved by God. Now, for the rest of this book of Malachi, it's going to get very negative. So basically, you can focus a lot on the negativity, but the reason why it starts off with love is because you are loved, this is something you need to fix. Okay? Because God has done so much for you, you know what? You need to get your act straight on this. And so first, God makes it very clear, who am I to you? Am I not like a father to you, a son? Am I not a master to you, a servant? I am the Lord of hosts, right? The Lord of hosts, actually, what that means is, He's talking about that there are hosts, that there are tens and thousands of angelic armies that He is Lord over. So He's like, I am not just your father, I am not just your master, I am the commander of these great angelic armies. This is who I am. So God is reminding us of His relationship to us. And how in that relationship, we're actually meant to show our love back. We're actually meant to honor. We're actually meant to respect Him. But unfortunately, that wasn't what was going on. Right? Now, in the English language, there isn't so much of a difference between how you speak to, like a friend or a child, and then to someone who's respectable. You do use different words, but it's not like in Korean where you have, chondeuma and padma. Right? Now, for me, I grew up learning Korean from older people, right? So my grandparents, my parents, they're the ones I would hear Korean from, but they would speak to me in Padma. So I would reply in Padma. I didn't know the difference, right? And so, I'd be talking to my grandpa, and be like, oh, 밥 먹었어? and my parents, they're trying to correct me, like, add seyo to everything, seyo. I'm like, why? And so, for those of us that are here in Korea and have lived in this culture, how you respect and honor those that are older than you, that are above you, it's built into the language itself, right? The way you even present yourself, right? The way your body language, all these things matter in this culture, right? You don't drink like this, you drink like this, right? I'm not talking about alcohol. Regardless. So, with that picture, God is saying, understand who I am to you. Do not forget, I love you, yes, but do not forget my relationship to you. And so he says, where is the honor and respect that I deserve? The actual literal words that are used here in the Hebrew are glory and fear. Glory is the word kavod in Hebrew, and it means literally the heaviness or the weight. And so when you recognize the glory of something, you are recognizing it is something immensely large and heavy. It is something that you cannot take, quote unquote, lightly. You have to recognize the glory of what it is. And so when you give God the honor or the glory that he deserves, you are recognizing his value, his greatness, his worth. And then the word respect. The word respect by itself, I think, is a little bit too weak, because the actual word is, I believe, yare, which is fear. And so fear is actually the literal word that's used here. And it's a word that I think we don't use that often, right? Because it has a very negative tone. But brothers and sisters, respect in itself has become a very casual word, right? Respect, right? You show respect to various people, but reverent fear is something that's very different. Reverent fear is only for people that are unapproachable, that are way above us, or to a all-powerful, all-knowing God. Right? There's a difference in your attitude. There's a difference in how your body language is in front of someone like this. Now, unfortunately, we live in an age where, honestly, brothers and sisters, there aren't that many world leaders that we can look up to. I come from America. I have a hard time with my current president. Where past people, past presidents, if they entered into the room, now granted there would be like Secret Service and all that, you would act differently, right? You wouldn't just walk up to a president and be like, hey, what's up? What's up, Moon Jae-in? It's like, high five. It's like that. You don't do that, right? First off, there are people with guns that are around you, but most importantly, this is someone that you're supposed to respect. And so there is an element of fear involved, that if you act inappropriately, then you'll be punished. Right? In that same way, God desires that honor and respect from us, understanding who he is to us and understanding all that he's done for us. This is what he deserves. But unfortunately, brothers and sisters, we tend to really devalue who God is. And yes, God is our friend. Yes, God is your homeboy. But at the same time, you can't let that relationship get too casual. Because when that relationship becomes that casual, all of a sudden that honor and respect that should be given is no longer. And instead we take something very heavy to be something very light. Isaiah 8 from verse 12 says, do not call conspiracy everything this people calls a conspiracy. Do not fear what they fear and do not dread it. The Lord Almighty is the one you are to regard as holy. He is the one you are to fear. He is the one you are to dread. It's an interesting language. If you understand that God is holy, his holiness demands you to fear and to dread him. It's a very interesting perspective, right? Oftentimes we look at God as like this big old teddy bear, right? You're like, oh, hi God. He's like, you hug this big old teddy bear. Now, if that was a grizzly bear, you wouldn't do that, right? But brothers and sisters, Scripture tells us that yes, God is a God of love. Yes, God is showing you mercy. But at the same time, his holiness demands your respect. It demands you to fear him and to understand how great and how awesome he is. God is not meant to be taken casually. And so he continues and he says to the priest, you have despised my name. And so let me explain this a little bit. Despise, the word here used, is actually the same word used in the story of Jacob and Esau. where Esau despised his birthright. Right? So Jacob actually gets the birthright from Esau for what? A bowl of soup. Right? Like literally like a bowl of yukgeja. Right? He gets the birthright, the privilege of being seen as like the firstborn from his own brother. That's how little Esau valued his birthright. And in that same way, God is saying, you have despised my name, you have devalued my name. Now on one hand, I've always talked about this before, but there is an immense value placed on names in the Bible. The reason why, part of it is because the meaning of the name, every time it's being proclaimed and said, it's being basically, it's manifesting. Right? So when you choose the name of someone, you're actually choosing kind of in many ways what they're going to be, who they're going to be like. So every time you see in the Bible where there is a name change, there is a drastic change in that person's fate. Right? Their future has ultimately changed when Jacob becomes Israel. Right? Now, on the other hand, the other issue here, now God, his personal name Yahweh, which literally means I am, or I was, I am, and I will be, is proclaiming that he is a living God from the past, the future, and the present. The other issue about despising someone's name is not just their literal name, but basically you are tarnishing their reputation. So when he's saying, you have despised my name, you have devalued the great worth of what my name means. Right? So this is what he's challenging these priests with. And they respond, how? How have we despised your name? And so again, just like before, God gives concrete evidence. He says, let me show you. Let me show you how you have despised my name, how you have mistreated and dishonored me. And so he talks about these animals that were meant to be given for sacrifice, but instead of the animals that they were supposed to give, pure and spotless, they were blind, lame, and as we see later in verse 13, some were, I think in the NIV it says injured, but the word there can actually be translated as stolen. Right? So people were actually bringing stolen goods to give a sacrifice to God. Right? It's something that had no value to them, something that they took from somebody else, and they were offering it to God as their sacrifice to Him. And so this is the concrete evidence God gave to show that you are despising my name, you are dishonoring me. How? By not giving me the sacrifice that you are supposed to. By not giving me the offering that in many ways you owe unto me. So brothers and sisters, God, who is someone who is completely worthy, who deserves our honor, who deserves to be glorified, was being given things of little to no value. Right? You were meant to give the very best of what you had, but instead they were giving animals or things that they were ready to just throw away. So brothers and sisters, one of the things that we need to remember is that sacrifices are meant to be costly. A sacrifice is not a sacrifice if it's not a sacrifice. You know what I mean? Let me say that again. A sacrifice is not a sacrifice if it's not an actual sacrifice. We're supposed to give things that mean something to us. Now some people believe, it's just the thought that counts. Okay. Now that's actually true, because God, what we know through the Bible is God doesn't care so much about the monetary value. Right? He cares more about what that means to you. Right? So if you don't have that much money and you give all that you have, then God takes that with a joyful heart. It's not about the value of what you're giving. But what's important is this something of value to you? If you have a lot of money, you give money, and it's of little value to you, that's still of little value to you. Brothers and sisters, sacrifices are meant to be costly. And what sacrifices were, the reason why they existed in the Old Testament was because sin demanded it. You look at the Old Testament law, sacrifices were required to purify people of their sin. And so this was something that was mandatory because people always sin, and we still do. So brothers and sisters, our own flaws, our own issues dealing with our own sin require us to give something of value unto God. But at the same time, if you truly understand that God has already given you everything that you have, giving Him just a little back is not that big of a deal. I'll get back to that in a second. So basically the question that is being asked in this passage is, how are you worshiping God? Right? Or ultimately, how are you showing your love to God? Now in the first 5 verses, God said, I have always loved you and this is my proof. And now He's basically asking, why are you not loving me back? The evidence that I have is showing me that you don't care about me. These sacrifices that you have been giving unto me show that your heart is not for me. As much as I have loved you, you are not loving me back. Brothers and sisters, worship, when you look into the meaning of the word worship comes from worthship. You are declaring the value, the worth of something. And if you look at the different words in the Bible that are translated into worship, there's basically two ways you can break it down. Number one, it's about posture, about being genuflecting on your knees, of being in a position of submission before someone greater than you. That is part of worship. The other part of it is serving, giving everything, right? Not just things of value, but serving and working for something. Those are the two general aspects that you see in worship when you look throughout the Bible. Worship, brothers and sisters, is not just the 15 to 20 minutes of singing songs together that we do every Sunday, right? That is part of it, right? We honor God through song. We honor God by proclaiming His many great things. But that is only a small part of what worship is. Worship is how we show God that we love Him. And in this story, He talks about these sacrifices that did not come up to snuff. These sacrifices that He demanded, that He was being given things that were of inferior value. And so what He says is, shut the temple down. Someone just close the doors. These worthless fires mean nothing to me. Right? Now, ironically, like about 500 years later, in 70 AD, this temple will be destroyed. Right? This temple was destroyed in 70 AD by the Romans and has never been rebuilt. Many Jews are still waiting for the third temple. It's okay, it's okay. So brothers and sisters, as that air conditioner says, shut the temple down. Because why God says this is He does not want worthless worship. Right? He does not want our leftovers. He does not want our just going through the motions. God wants worship that is actually valuable to Him. God wants us to give something that is of value back to Him. He does not want worthless worship. Because when He receives this inferior worship, it shows Him our heart to Him. And so He continues and he says that these priests are profaning His name. Basically, He's saying, my name, which is of great value and worth, you are basically attributing to as nothing. Something that is worthy, you are saying it is worthless and nothing. You are profaning it. Not only are you despising it, you are actually dragging it through the mud. And so what He says is, if you do not worship me, if you do not see who I am, this is what is going to happen. My name will be great and feared among the nations. He is saying this to the Jewish people. His his first people that were his people, that he came into covenant with, and he says, you know what, if you're not going to worship with me, if you're not going to worship me and see who I am, then the rest of the world will. Even if you can't see how precious and how valuable and how worthy of honor and respect I am, the rest of the world will. And so already God was proclaiming that all nations would glorify him, not just Israel. And Jesus, in a similar way, in Luke 19, verse 40, says, I tell you, he replied, if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out. Next week is Palm Sunday. This is the Palm Sunday passage. In this passage, Jesus is being worshipped by literally the entire city of Jerusalem. And these Pharisees come and confront him. And he says, if they keep quiet, the stones themselves will cry out. Brothers and sisters, if we do not worship God, someone else, something else will. Because God is that worthy of worship. You know, there's that famous quote by Piper about missions, right? You guys know this quote, right? Why do missions exist? You guys don't know this quote? Why do missions exist? Because worship does not. John Piper's argument is that the whole reason why world missions exist is so that everyone around the world will worship God. And his argument basically is, you know what? The point of missions is to get to the point where we don't need to worship anymore because we will be in the presence of God. Missions exist because worship doesn't. Now the passage closes by making it very clear. God is not asking for something that we don't have. He talks about this chief who has already vowed to give this animal that is already in his possession but decides not to. Right? Brothers and sisters, God is not demanding you to go beyond what you have. As I said before, He is the one who has given you everything that you have. All He's asking for is for you to have that heart to give back unto Him. To understand how precious and valuable God is, and to be willing to give something of value back unto Him. God is not asking for more than you can give. So brothers and sisters, the real question for today is, if you understand that you are loved by God, as we talked about last week, then what is the evidence of your love back to God? You know, yes, coming to church on Sundays is important. It's great. You're coming together in corporate worship of God. But brothers and sisters, there's more than that. I'm not talking about value or money, right? Honestly, brothers and sisters, if you give more offering here, I won't know. I'm completely unaware of any of these things. This is not a sermon to ask for more tithing, right? But this is instead asking about your heart. Are you giving back to God what He deserves? Whether that's your time. Honestly, brothers and sisters, money is of value, yes, but I would say in this day and age, time is more precious. Right? Time is the greatest currency that I see in this day and age. And so my question is, are you giving God your time? Whether that's time in the Word, whether that's time in prayer, whether that's time in just having a relationship with God, or do you just give Him what's left over? What is the evidence of your love to God? That is the real question for today. Are you giving Him what is precious? Or are you giving Him what you're going to throw out anyway? So brothers and sisters, this is the main thing I want us to focus on today is how are we worshiping Him? What is our attitude? What is our heart? What is our mindset? Are we willing to give God our best? Whether it's time, money, other resources, experiences, whatever it might be, are we going to give Him our best? And are we going to truly show God through this that we love Him? God, I know that You love me. God, I desire to show my love back to You by worshiping You with everything that I have. Let's take some time to pray. Go ahead and close for today. I want you to take a moment to just meditate on what is something that you feel God is telling you that He wants more of from you. Right? What is precious to you that you are holding back from God, that you have been reluctant to give unto God? Just take a moment to ask God, God, show me what this is and give me the ability and the heart to change and to know, Lord, that this is something that You deserve. So let's ask God, what do I need to give back to You today? Let's pray. Lastly, understanding that we are loved, understanding what God has done by sending Jesus to die for our sins. Let's take a moment to ask God, correct my understanding of You. Lord, if I have looked at You too lightly, if I have not attributed You the honor, the glory, the respect that You deserve,